This YouTuber is called Way of the World. I recommend his channel. You should subscribe to it. In life, when you like people's content, that doesn't mean you always have to agree with everything they say. Now, to be fair, MGTOW was not the subject of this video. He was talking about white women and the problems with how white women tend to go towards the left. They accept all of the diversity and the feminism. And he's not really going that deep when it comes to white women. And then he makes these comments on MGTOW.
While the problem with white women is indeed complex, I think the best thing our men can do is to focus on self-improvement and rediscovering their masculinity. MGTOW is not the way to go. It is guaranteed defeat for our people. Go to the gym, look good, focus on self-improvement of mind and body. In short, we have to make ourselves the obvious choice for our women by being the sort of man they want to be with, the sort of man they want to have families with.
Of course, these are brief comments, but they do illustrate the basic divide between white nationalists and MGTOW, which is an unfortunate divide, as I've been saying for a while now, because MGTOW are pretty much, by definition, opposed to feminism. And also, many of us lean towards a right-wing perspective. Some of us may be libertarians, but many of us have, so-called conservative perspective on things. I certainly do. So he mentions self-improvement and rediscovering masculinity. I mean, self-improvement is pretty vague, but sure, that's fine. And as for rediscovering masculinity, I mean, I agree. So, Way of the World perceives MGTOW as a threat. He also suggests that MGTOWs aren't masculine enough. I mean, he doesn't say that explicitly, but I think that's the implication. I mean, they have not developed themselves, as he puts it. They're losers. They're incels, in other words. Or maybe he's saying that men are losers and incels, and then they hear the MGTOW message, and then they're finished. So maybe he means something like that. But let me ask Way of the World a question. Why do you want losers and incels to reproduce for the white race? I mean, do you think they're going to raise healthy masculine boys to save our civilization? Shouldn't you be relieved that these men are being phased out of the gene pool? I mean, MGTOW representing cultural defeat? I mean, come on, please don't flatter us. We're losers, remember? Ah, yes, it's so simple. You see, men have to change so that women will want us after all. Hypergamy? That doesn't exist. That's just a fantasy. All men can become chads if they go to the gym. It doesn't matter what bone structure you have. Even an ectomorph can get really, really buff. An ectomorph like me, you've seen me, I'm a skinny person. If I went to the gym and I spent enough time at the gym and I ate enough protein and I had the right mantras in my head about self-improving myself and I cleaned my room. But if I did that, if I put in the physical work, man, I would be able to be a linebacker on the football field. I would be able to be sacked by a big dude and, man, I would be just as big as he was. Because it doesn't matter what your bone structure is. They don't teach you this in school. It doesn't matter. There aren't anything like different bone structures. It doesn't matter what your genes are. All men can be big, hunking football players. I mean, American football players. It's just natural. That's always happened. I mean, take steroids if you have to, but you don't even have to take steroids. Then we get to this situation where all the men will be chads and the women, well, they won't go for just the top chads. Oh, no. Now they're going to happily pair up with all the chads. It's so straightforward that I can't believe nobody has thought of this before. I mean, over the last 20 years, this is a truly unique and revolutionary statement. Go to the gym, work on self-improvement. And it has been working. The problem is, well, men, we just haven't heard the good news yet. We just haven't heard the good news. And you might say, well, what about having money? What about having a promising career? Nah, that's not even that important to mention. The main thing is you just have to look good and be self-confident. Oh, so you work at Best Buy? You have no immediate prospect of working a more lucrative job? Nah, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. Once women see that you're fit, you're muscular, and you're self-respecting, trust me, they'll be quick to marry you. Mark Collett said you gotta go out on a Saturday night. When you're looking top of your game, go down to a bar on a Saturday night. And believe you me, there's a ton of women out there that would just love for you to buy them a drink. And he's right, they probably don't mind if you buy them a drink. But then they're gonna marry you. Okay, irony aside. He's talking about MGTOW being cultural defeat for our people. Please forgive my combative tone. I'm not trying to be too offensive towards the way of the world. I really appreciate the work he's doing. But when he's saying that MGTOW represents cultural defeat for our people, besides the fact that he's being too flattering to we're losers, somehow we're going to cause the defeat of Western civilization if we're losers? How does that work? How does that make sense? Having said that, let me actually tell you what was cultural defeat for our people. Giving women the vote. And to be honest, that was a logical progression from giving all men the vote, which also should not have happened. Democracy at most should be limited. But it wasn't just that marked the cultural defeat of our people. It was also letting women into the workforce, at least in the modern sense, where they take home a paycheck hefty enough to free them from dependence on men, allowing divorce courts unchecked power to figuratively rape men, legalizing abortion, destroying the patriarchy, which is a broad concept, but that would include feminizing men. We've heard of the Gillette commercial. That's just a good example where men are taught not to do the things that are natural to them. No more masculine culture. No more male spaces. Or all commercials in general, you can see that men are portrayed as dumb and useless. This is not just commercials. This is movies. This is in all media. Our education system is dominated by women as the teachers. The students in universities are mostly female. That caused the cultural defeat for our people. But I know those latter points are more broad. You know, I'm moving from the more specific things to the more broad things. Here's a specific thing that you could say has caused the cultural defeat for our people. And not all MGTOW would agree with me on this, and not all white nationalists would agree with me on this, but it has been the de-Christianization of our society. At least in this sense, ignoring what the Bible has to say about women obeying their husbands. It does say that in the Bible. And I'm not a Protestant who thinks that it's just the Bible. I believe in the church tradition. And we have ignored the church tradition. We have ignored what the church fathers had to say about women. There are some serious red pills on female nature in the church fathers' writings. We would not have had Christianity if it had not been for the church fathers. And let me just quickly read you some of what the church fathers had to say about women. And I'm referring here to a very useful video from the real Med White, who illustrated these concepts. He provided some very useful quotations. So if you're interested in Orthodox Christianity, then I recommend you check out the real Med White. St. Jerome says, woman is the root of all evil. St. John Chrysostom says, amongst all the savage beasts, none is found so harmful as woman. St. John Chrysostom also says, let them not teach, but occupy the station of learners, for thus they will show submission by their silence. For the sex is naturally somewhat talkative, and for this reason he restrains them on all sides. The woman taught once and ruined all. On this account, therefore, he says, let her not teach. In his epistle to the Corinthians, where he says, it is a shame for women to speak in the church. And the reason is that the law has made them subject to men. And the church fathers recognize that Adam sinned in the Garden of Eden, but they tended to view the major problem being Eve. She actually caused Adam to sin, according to the church fathers. That is the consensus. Clement of Alexandria, regarding women, he says, the consciousness of their own nature must evoke feelings of shame. Nor are women to be deprived of bodily exercise, but they are not to be encouraged to engage in wrestling or running, but are to exercise themselves in spinning and weaving and superintending the cooking if necessary. St. Augustine says, woman was given to man, woman who was of small intelligence and who perhaps still lives more in accordance with the promptings of the inferior flesh than by superior reason. Is this why the Apostle Paul does not attribute the image of God to her? St. Paul, in 1 Corinthians 11, verses 3 to 16, at the beginning he says, but I want you to know that the head of every man is Christ, the head of woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. He's basically preaching modesty. The women in church have to cover up. Men don't have to cover up in church because we are made in the image of God. And St. Paul says furthermore, and I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man, to be in silence. So anyways, that's enough from the church fathers. I just wanted to give you a sample of what they believed. If it's actually the ancient conservative norm, then women really have no right to tell any men or lecture any men about anything. They can't tell their husbands what to do, and they certainly can't tell the man in the street what to do. Do you hear this sort of stuff coming from white nationalists? No, you don't, unfortunately. Why is this incompatible with white nationalism? It's not necessarily incompatible. Recognizing the natural hierarchy in the world is going to help you preserve your civilization. So it will help you save your people. Half the content I watch on YouTube is somewhat white nationalist. I don't want to be your enemy. But I have to say that in some regards, white nationalism is kind of cucked when it comes to the question of female nature. They mostly don't talk about it. Even in this video by way of the world, they mostly don't get into the meat of the matter. They don't seem to see it as an important issue. For example, look at Stefan Molyneux. Now, he's not religious. He's not a white nationalist. Stefan Molyneux talks about female nature way more than any white nationalist that I have seen. Take Morgoth's Review. Race Purist Morgoth's Review. Again, a channel I quite enjoy. A channel which I recommend. Subscribe to Morgoth's Review. But don't expect to get any red pills about female nature from Morgoth's Review. The most he ever called out women was in a few videos over the last year or a year and a half, where he has criticized young British women who get drunk, especially those who go vacationing in Spain, and when they get drunk they do very lewd things. I mean, they're very sexually unrestrained. So he told them basically to get their act in order. But that's as far as he has gone. So in conclusion, white nationalists should stop worrying about MGTOW, because based on what you guys have been saying, or what the general consensus has been, that we're losers, we're incels, we're effeminate men. Some of you say that we're gay. Well, fine, then if that's true, surely you don't want us reproducing. So you can rest easy. The real men will serve the race and they will reproduce. I mean, just look around at which men have kids these days. Surely you can see that the men having kids these days are all alpha males. Yep, every one of them, especially in the big cities. A man walking around with a baby strapped to his chest, there aren't actually men walking around with babies strapped to their chest. I mean, come on, what are you trying to scare us away from marriage? Or men who produce 2 or 3 kids and they pay for the house and they pay for all the other expenses, and their wife works at some big corporation, and together they send the kids to daycare, or the kids get cared for by a nanny. I mean, that's another lie. That doesn't happen either. When the alpha male's producing the bacon, the wife always stays at home. So that's just another lie. You see, if you're an alpha male, you're automatically going to get women. And furthermore, you'll do whatever is best for your race. All other considerations are unimportant. Hasta luego, amigos.